Call to order the regular town commission meeting of January 24, 2023. Please rise for the allegiance to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo, Commissioner Fender,
Here.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Here.
Okay, we don't have any proclamations or presentations, so we'll move to public comment. First up is Jackie Fairley-Lippisch.
Oh, hello, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Jackie Thurlow-Lippisch, and I live at 18 Riverview Drive in Sewalls Point and grew up at 18 Banyan Road in India-Lucy since 1974. Please excuse my appearance, but I thought I would try to walk the bridge and do something positive after my public comments tonight. I also wish to make a comment for the South Florida Water Management District, of which I sit on their board briefly, and then I have a comment general for the town. The Army Corps of Engineers started discharging from Lake Okeechobee on Saturday, and it's 500 CFS. Just to give you some perspective, when it was the very worst it ever was, 2013 or so, it was between 7,000 and 9,000 cubic feet per second. So 500, it's not that it's nothing, but it's certainly not what we've had at the worst of times. This is basically what's called a HAB deviation. A HAB deviation is a harmful algae bloom deviation because they're expecting very high levels of algae in the lake because of Hurricane Ian, and the lake went up 4 feet. And so the Army Corps, believe it or not, set up a situation where they can give water when there's not algae in the lake. So that's what we're doing. I support it, the district supports it, and hopefully we won't be doing it for so long that the estuary is fresh. And then if they dumped in summer, we could be into a similar situation as 2013, 2016, or 2018. One of my New Year's resolutions is to try to help my mother with her history work. And so I know I probably have about 30 seconds left, but my mom writes articles for the Sewalls Point Living magazine, now known as Stroll, and her article in, I think it was April of 2022, was about the B.A. Colonus 1883 descriptive report. I have had Commissioner Campo in my driveway to tell him about this report, he might remember, and I just thought tonight was an appropriate time to bring this up. I can't really put it out, but in 1883, just a few places were surveyed for the geodetic survey, the United States government. And one of those was our area, and basically all the way up to Fort Pierce. So in this survey, back then they had to hand write out their surveys. This is what it says. The prettiest land on this sheet is a peninsula lying between the St. Lucie River and the Indian River Lagoon from Mount Pleasant south to the point. That is Sewalls Point. We live in the most beautiful area, even in 1883, documented with the United States government and War College. And I hope that you will continue to protect this place, our trees and our waters and the things of God's green earth that are more beautiful here than anywhere else. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie, that was a good interview you did on the news, too, in reference to the discharge.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Tony Lagana.
Good evening. Mayor, Commissioners, and Town Manager, Mr. Daniels. My comments address the agenda item, which is the letter that the town attorney is writing to the mayor and the commission. I would like to remind you what the town attorney proposes is a two-way street. My attorney tells me the most pertinent element of the foreclosure is that it gives us an opportunity to view the original proceeding in open court in front of a jury of my peers. Of course, this will occur in the countersuit. The town attorney mentions that the appeals court has ruled against me in the two alleged violations, and he is absolutely correct. What I suspect you were not told is that the appeals court does not decide on the original ruling. It rules on whether or not the appellant was afforded due process. The foreclosure proceeding allows me to bring the original allegation into the sunshine in an effort to expose the truth. And as the saying goes, the truth will set you free. The town attorney estimates the proceeding will cost taxpayers of the town between $35,000 and $65,000. Added to the $15,000 to $18,000 he claims is already spent, it represents an interesting bottom line for the attorney bringing the action. All of this could have been avoided if the town attorney had done his job of advising on the law. All he had to do was to remind Ms. Berger that she signed to reissue the permit passed by the previous town manager, and point out to her the ordinance in the Town Code of Ordinances, number 70-81, which clearly dictates how the permit works. I have asked one of the real estate agents I deal with to give me an estimate of what being stopped from building my house has cost me. After consulting with two appraisers, it was determined that in addition to the approximate $5,000 I've paid out of my pocket, the loss of the hot market, and the increased cost of the construction, the compensatory damages, if I'm successful, would be in the neighborhood of $2 million. That does not include punitive damages. I will not burden the taxpayers of Sewalls Point with damages if I'm successful. I believe the parties responsible should be monetarily responsible, and my attorney will try and make sure they cannot hide behind the statute that protects government or its agents. To the commissioner, who in the closed-door meeting said, he's also pushing 80 years old, I have to say, I push back. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda. It's been requested that item 11C be moved up, and if nobody has an objection, we'll handle that as the first item under new business.
I'll move the agenda be approved with that one change.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck.
Yes, that brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any questions, items to be pulled, or a
I'll
motion
move.
to approve?
I'll move to approve this consent agenda as provided.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Go ahead.
So we could remove the financials, or I could just make a comment. Since Mariah is not here, maybe it should just be a comment. The format seems to have changed, and I'll take that up with staff. We used to isolate each month's financials, and now they're grouped together with year-to-date, and I'd like to return back so that we can isolate each monthly progress on the financials. So I could just take that up with the staff,
Thanks for catching that.
okay?
Okay,
So
thank you. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo,
aye.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to, we have no public hearings on ordinances, second or first or second readings. That brings us to resolutions. Resolution number 954, 2023 legislative priorities. Town clerk, please read the resolution title into the record.
A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Sewalls Point, Florida, adopting legislative priorities for the 2023 State of Florida legislative session.
Okay, is there any, Mr. Daniels, do you have any kind of lead-in or?
I think our lobbyists had met with each one of you, and I think the main push that we're doing is a push for the appropriation for Phase 2. There are some other items that are listed in the platform, the legislative platform that's in front of you. Basically, those are items that are part of the League of Cities and also supporting our effort for the tree regulations.
Commissioner Mayfield, does this incorporate some of the priorities for the League of Cities?
It does. I believe the town manager put in the ones that were most pertinent to Sewalls Point. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes,
that's
because
correct.
there are other ones that don't really affect us just based on our size and our services. So I'm fine with that, even though I stand with the league on what they say for the legislative, whatever they term this, their statements, their stance, I should say.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Fender,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tombeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo.
Aye.
All right, so that'll bring us to the first item in new business, and that is now the updated tree permit for 10 Oakwood. We do have a public comment. Elizabeth Wilkinson, I'm sorry. Come forward.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I am Elizabeth Wilkinson. For the last 30 years, I've lived at 8 Oakwood Drive. So, yes, I do have concerns about the house and the landscape at 10 Oakwood Drive, now that the trees are mostly removed from that property. What is the plan for privacy between our houses? The house plan appears to take up a large percentage of the lot. I'm concerned there won't be much room for green areas. The house equipment appears in the northwest corner of the lot, which is right next to my back patio. I'm concerned about the noise level there. The driveway in the plans appears to be right next to the property line. And I am concerned about privacy. What are the plans to protect my property value and to provide privacy between the two houses? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Daniels, do you have a lead-in, or does Jack want to do a little presentation? What do we need to do here?
Jack, you want to walk us through it, please? Our building official.
Good evening. As far as 10 Oakwood goes, the builder did come in and submit for a tree removal permit along with a set of plans. The plans do show that the footprint of the house is within its right to be that size. What it calls for is 30% coverage, and then you're allowed up to 45% coverage overall. He is over the total amount over by 2%. So he has been notified of that. The builder's going to be getting me a new site plan showing less coverage. The permit that was submitted did not include the permit that was submitted and approved did not include the big banyan tree ficus that's on the left side of the property. As far as the other trees that were removed, we did receive a letter from an arborist saying that some of those were diseased and whatnot, and so they were on that list to be removed. The question is that the ficus that is there that is remaining, whether it's able to remain or not. What the builder did is had his surveyor go out and mark the four corners of the house. Unfortunately, one of the corners of the house is in the middle of that ficus. The ficus is in the footprint of the house. With that, the owner and the builder are proposing to swap out the ficus banyan tree for another tree. They want to present that proposal to the board here. As far as the house goes and the privacy between the two houses, we have nothing in our ordinance that regulates whether the owner or the neighbor is entitled to or going to get privacy. It's something that we encourage the builder to go ahead and plant and do something with that. But there's nothing in our town ordinance that says that they can't put the air conditioning units along the side of the house. They can't be in the setback, and down here they're not in the setback. They just have to be located on the side of the house. But everything we ask for, they've done, except for this fact that they've taken down some trees that we would have preferred for them to have stayed. They do have a mitigation amount of inches that they have to fulfill at the very end with a landscape plan. I've asked for a landscape plan. Actually, I asked for that yesterday. They're unable to get me that landscape plan because they're telling me that the landscape architect is a little bit busy right now, unable to get that. But I kept encouraging the builder, I need that ASAP. But either way, before a CO can be issued, they have to abide by our ordinance and also by what the landscape plan is, with the mitigation of all the inches of trees that they did remove. So with that, I don't know if you want to hear from the builder.
If I can add, I think it's just either 129 or 130 inches is what the mitigation is.
It's right around there, you're correct.
I kind of have a question. You know, we had a discussion on Saturday about what kind of things the commission should be doing in terms of setting policy and not maybe getting into the details here. And I'm kind of wondering why this is on the agenda. I mean, we're not asking for a change in our ordinance or a change in policy. To me, this is really a permit issue, a code enforcement issue. So I'm not exactly sure why we're looking at it. Can somebody help me with that?
Yeah, I concur. Did you ask for this to be on the agenda, town manager? Okay. So,
Commissioner
okay.
Commissioner Bender?
So I'm just wondering if the town manager asked for this to be in front of us because you needed our help, or are you comfortable?
Well, this is an issue that Commissioner Fender brought up because of what had occurred. And there are a number of suggestions, I guess, from the community because of the fact they don't know what that mitigation is going to be at, and that's what we were trying to get accomplished, so at least the members of the community knew what they were going to put in. But Commissioner Fender was the one that...
I did request it be put on the agenda because this appears to be a process breakdown. So in cases where policy needs to be set, I agree. We try to stay out of it. I believe that this process could have gone smoothly like all of our other building processes, but the optics of it prevented that from happening because of perhaps a miscommunication, a process break, but certainly damage has been done to the environment. There seems to be some neighbors who have raised some issues about it. As soon as the community started raising issues, I also stepped in and let them know that we were listening to that. So we can talk policy position, or we can talk what our role is when the process breaks down in order to facilitate policy is followed.
Well, I think if there's, if there's some changes that we want to make to an ordinance or whatever, we certainly want to look at that. But other than that, I'm not sure we should be making any decisions here on this tonight.
Yeah, does the building official think that the process was broken down? Do you think that you're on top of this, or do you need us to help you, or?
No, I'm pretty sure I have it under control.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got twice the budgeted amount of inspections. I mean, we did $750,000 of building inspections. My hat's off to you. And you're doing a great job, and we're doing a lot, and the town manager's doing a lot. So I think, I have full confidence in the two of you to work through this process without, if you need our input, you can get it, but I think unless you're saying that you need our help, we ought to let the process continue.
Commissioner Fender?
My question is, when there is a discrepancy on the plan that says, hey, you were not supposed to knock this tree down, and there's a question, then my question is, what's the process in that case? If you cannot bring it to the commission to protect the neighborhood where we set policy and we set the agenda of our community, then when would you actually set policy? I mean, it's a clearly known fact that we're a tree city. And if you, as leaders in the community, are not protecting that canopy, then who will?
Well, I mean, I think it's a case where we've produced the required ordinances. If somebody breaks the ordinance, then it becomes a code enforcement issue, and that's what this sounds like to me.
My understanding is that the standing remaining tree plan does not match with what is happening on the lot. So I'd like to know where it deviated.
Isn't that a code? Isn't that a court code?
You tell me. I don't.
It sounds like it is to me. Vice Mayor Kurzman?
I tend to agree more with Frank on this one. We've been getting, we probably get one call every month or two about a tree or several trees that are getting cut down that shouldn't be getting cut down. People are questioning the trees that are getting cut down. Should they have been cut down? And, you don't know what the arborist is signing off on. Maybe we need to charge more for tree permits to get cut, and maybe we need to have our own arborist to come down and give a second opinion, just in case. Because this is it's becoming too much of a common thing now, and it's pitting neighbor against neighbor, which is not a good thing, and it makes it uncomfortable. And I could go back once again to the situation we have up on Mandalay in the cul-de-sac, where people are getting in each other's face over there because trees were cut, and the attitude is like, put it on my tab, it's $5,000, I don't care. So it's 40,000 in trees. Here it is, and that's the end of it. And it's like me buying lunch at the end of the day to some people. It's just not a big.
I'm not aware of a fine here. I think we're comfortable with the development of the property. I think that it just didn't follow the standard process of all the other lots that we've developed in the neighborhood. And it warrants a little additional attention and a discussion of now that an issue has been raised, I'd like to know what that mitigation is that has been described, because this lot was clear cut. I mean, if that is not the basis of what our ordinance stand for and overlooking it, I guess I don't know what is.
Mr. Daniels?
Yes, we do have the owner and the contractor here, and I think they can probably best explain. Now, one of the procedures that we did change in the building department since this occurred is when we get that mitigation plan. It's always been towards, before the CO, the certificate of occupancy, we got the plan, and those trees or bushes were part of that plan and would be installed prior to the CO, the certificate of occupancy. We changed that now to having that up front. So when we have a tree permit, we know what the mitigation is. And that way it's a public document and we can share that information when we have it. The situation is you have a buildable lot with trees on it. And they do have a right to go in and build their home, and we work with them, but that's where the mitigation comes into effect. They do have to replace the trees that they took out, which, when we say 130 inches, that's the diameter of the tree, the caliber of the tree, just so everybody's aware of that. And so that's, roughly, depending on the size of the trees that they put in, is the amount of trees that they have to put back. Now, I have spoken to both the contractor and the owner because of the lot size, and the other parts that are part of that is the septic field for the septic tank and the drainage requirement that they retain their water on their property. So those are things that also have to fit in on their lot. So my suggestion is, and unless you have further questions of me right now, is let them explain to you what their mitigation is.
Commissioner Fender?
Yeah, so that's an excellent suggestion, and I was going to ask if this was a process, that what you just described is a process change?
Yes.
As of since you've been here, or?
No, since I found out that this is what, what our procedure has been.
All right.
And I spoke with Jack about it, and, I would prefer to have it up front, so we have a tree removal request and a mitigation plan that spells out which trees and where they're going to be located at. We don't have that, and that's what Jack had mentioned in his response, is that it takes a couple months, depending on who they're utilizing. A lot of people use some local folks that live here in the community to do their landscape architecture. And that's the case, my understanding is that's the case here. And just because of their huge demand, it does take a little while in getting it. So, I'd much rather see that delay occur up front, so we have all the information when we make a decision as to, the validity of removing trees and so forth.
Go ahead, Commissioner Fender.
Okay, well, that's great. So I've heard three discrepancies now. I've heard that we're off on permeability. I've heard Jack stand up in the previous meeting and say, hey, we're saving that 5-story ficus, and then to find out that that's not the case. And now I see the building, the four things, the plan that shows where that tree was to be saved, and now to understand it's not. And then lastly, the mitigation, and that we don't know what the mitigation is before the building starts. So I'm hoping that the builders and the owner will, and I believed it to be true, that this is going to be a great property when it's done, and it's going to be an asset to the neighborhood. And I'm sure the neighbors that are on both sides of that and on the street want to hear that, and I'm, I think we should give them the opportunity to educate us.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, may we?
Well, I'm just wondering, does commissioners have any other questions, or?
Well, I'm just
want to
wondering,
let the process work its way through?
I'm wondering why this process isn't done with staff and why it needs to involve commission time.
Well, I think it's reasonable for any commissioner here to ask for something you put on the agenda.
Of course.
And that's what Commissioner
course.
Fender did, and we've
Sure.
had a discussion on it. I think we're convinced that Jack has this well in hand, and that he's going to continue to run through the process and make sure we meet all of our ordinances and requirements. And if anything else comes up, Jack, that you need help from us, please feel free to ask.
Okay.
I think we're finished with this item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, there's public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Diane Kimes, you kind of gave us a little bit of a late notice thing here, but
Diane Kimes, 2 Riverview Drive, and after hearing the discussion, I think we should look at other cities. I'll give Sanibel as an example. As you move forward, maybe the board would want to consider when a house plan is submitted, that a landscape plan accompany it. It's part of the process. That way, if there are trees that need to be removed, it's right there. It's from the beginning. There are very few open lots left, so there's going to be a lot of renovations. So I urge you all to consider that and look at towns like Sanibel, who really walk the environmental walk. Thank you.
okay, that brings us to our next new business item, which is use application, Day Spa B2 zoning district.
Thanks.
Mr. Daniels, you want to start us off on this item?
Sure. Actually, the request came in through our planner of looking at the possibility of having a day spa in the old bank space that was next door to us here in the condominium office building. And so I'll ask Bonnie if she can come up to the mic, please, and take it from there.
Okay, so the location is in the B2 zoning district, and there's a list of uses, and this is not one of them. However, your code provides allowances for you as the commission to consider other uses if you find it to be in harmony with the surrounding area. So basically, the request is to have the use of day spa. The applicant has provided their justification. One of the considerations in the code is that it should be the same character as the surrounding, or the uses in B2, and it should not be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the district. It's important to note that if you approve the use, they still have a building process to go through, so they would have to submit the plans for the interior renovations that have to be approved through the building official. They also have to get licensure through the state of Florida for that use. And staff, both myself and the building official, have looked at this request. We find it to be acceptable, and we recommend approval. The representatives for that application are present if you have any questions related to their intent. Thank you.
Any discussion from the commission?
Move staff approval?
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tom Peck?
Yes?
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Aye.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Okay, the next item is foreclosure on 19 East High Point Road. Mr. Torcivia, would you introduce this item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As indicated in the letter, as you're aware, there were two code enforcement cases brought regarding 19 East Point Road. Both had full hearings in front of the town special magistrate. Both cases, Ms. Liligana appeared and testified. There was a lot of pictures. And in both cases, the magistrate entered orders in favor of the town. Both those cases were appealed to the local appellate court. In both cases, the appellate court declined the appeal and affirmed the town's position. Unfortunately, the property still, what I can see from pictures like that Jack, I think, took earlier today, is still not in compliance. And as long as the property is not in compliance, fines continue to accrue. Last count, those fines are a little over $200,000. So the question really for the commission is, do you just want the fines to continue to accrue? And obviously they'll keep going up and up and up until the property is in compliance, or do you want to authorize that the town authorize a foreclosure action to be commenced? If so, I'll probably bring at the next meeting an outside firm that specializes in foreclosures to represent the town in the foreclosure process. I don't. So it's really up to the commission whether you think it's the town's best interest to foreclose on this piece of property. If the town's successful, you would receive a judgment, in the amount of the fine at that point. So foreclosure cases generally take up to a year. That fine could be approaching $300,000 at that point, and you'd get your, if you win, your attorney's fees and costs. So the total judgment in the town's favor for this case could exceed $300,000. Just as you read about, foreclosure sales sold on the quote courthouse steps, that's kind of a thing of the past. It's all done by electronic auction now, but realistically, the property gets sold to the highest bidder, and just like a mortgage, the town's lien would get paid off in full, presuming the property sold for at least, say, $300,000. And my understanding is it probably would sell for a bit more than that. So again, tough question. Foreclose on a resident. The other side of the coin is, the other residents in the area are affected by this property.
Okay, any comments or discussion? I think, as I was looking through this and trying to understand it, these fines have been accruing for a long time to the tune of about $250 a day. And it's my understanding that the actual fines would stop accruing if the fence is removed and the shed is removed from the property. And it baffles me why somebody wouldn't spend one day getting that done to get the fines to stop accruing. It's also my understanding that there currently is no there are no permits in-house for review. So I'm wondering, what we need to do here. I mean, obviously, it's not, foreclosure is not something we want to do. I certainly don't appreciate being threatened, as we were earlier today. So, what I'm thinking about, I think we ought to start the process. Commissioner Campo?
I agree with everything you just said.
Hold on.
Any other comments? Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I agree. I don't want to foreclose. That's not really the business the town needs to be taking on. We have other more important things to do. But to the mayor's point, it is easy to come into compliance, relatively easy. And as far as I know, the homeowner is not incapacitated. There's been plenty of opportunities to do so. Most of all, the town would like to work with the homeowner and just fix the problem and move forward. But that doesn't seem to be happening, and it seems as if, particularly with the comment, there was a line drawn in the sand, and we need to just proceed forward with the best interest of the town, which I think is following our rules, regulations, and having some follow-through. So I agree with the mayor and Commissioner Campo.
Commissioner Kurzman?
Yeah, I still think that we could try and work something out. I am one that is never in favor of foreclosing somebody's property. It's happened to my family in the past, and it's not because it wasn't, our property was taken away by the government, and it affected property that's been in my family for many generations, and they took it away because they decided making a road and putting a utility company was more important. So I would never, ever approve anything being foreclosed under any circumstances. And I'd like to see if we could do this in an open meeting and sit down and see if we could resolve this, the commission, along with Mr. Lagana, his attorneys, whatever it might take. But I feel there's a more amicable way about going about this, and that's my opinion.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, Vice Mayor, I agree with you. I'm under the impression the town manager told me that even before this meeting last week, he called in the homeowner and said, the property owner, and said, this is where it's leading, this is on the agenda, this is an option. Are you willing to work, and correct me, town manager, are you willing to work with us and to work with the town and come into compliance? And then I'm certain that, or not certain, but quite certain that the town would be willing to work with the fees, the fines. I mean, I certainly am. We're not in the business of trying to get more money from our residents, but we just, you need to come into compliance. The neighbors have not liked it, and so this was an opportunity, in my opinion, what you just said, amicably trying to solve the situation, and he didn't, I agree, I think he said he wouldn't comply, so what? That was, anyways, I just wanted, because I thought that angle too, like, look, come on, we can all work this out, this is a little bit crazy, and so but I don't, it seems like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I'm sure there's something that could be worked out still. I think, and I know Mr. Lagana would love to build his home over in High Point. I know that was his dream for a while, and I wanted to have that dream. And it's a property he purchased for his future home where he wanted to retire into. And I feel that there's something that can be worked out with the commission and Mr. Lagana, all present. The commission as a whole has never talked to Mr. Lagana, and I think things could be changed. I was talking with Mr. Lagana when I was told I can no longer talk to him, and I've respected what I was told. I haven't approached or talked to Mr. Lagana about that, but I feel that we were close to having a deal at one point where we were able to work something out, and it crumbled with the prior town manager, and it just never came to fruition where it should have. And I feel we're so close, and now we've become so far, and I feel it could still be fixed. He's been a valued member of this community for many years, and I just feel I can't do it. I feel there's more of an open forum. I think this could be resolved, and I'm going to stick with that.
Mr. Tercivia?
I guess the only thing I would add is that, code enforcement is always a difficult process because it always involves neighbors and other neighbors, and some folks are unhappy, and some say, well, why is this person getting away with it? You know, if there's codes in town and the town needs to enforce the codes, and if he or she doesn't have to comply, why do I have to comply? I see that in many towns. In this particular instance, not only did Mr. Daniels meet with Mr. Lagana, but my understanding is Mr. Hudson, when he became the interim town manager, he met with Mr. Lagana and also said the first thing you need to do is bring the property into compliance, then we can talk. And he's not done that, and it's been months. And Mr. Lagana did have an attorney that called me maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and I've known this attorney for years, and we had a conversation, and we both agreed that the first step is to bring the property into compliance. And I remember saying, okay, so if he brings it into compliance, we can probably work something out. And she called me back a little bit later and said, no, he's not going to bring it into compliance. So in the code enforcement world, once you bring a property into compliance, the normal process is then you go back to the special magistrate and ask for a reduction in the fine. And that reduction is left to the magistrate. It could be reduced anywhere from 1% to 70%, whatever it is, but you have to come into compliance first. And that's always been the issue. And again, I scratch my head as much as the mayor apparently scratches his in terms of why not just remove the shed, take down the fence, bring the property into compliance, and then try to negotiate a reduction. But it's been 2 years, and it's never happened. So again, it's up to the commission as to whether you want to authorize foreclosure. Nobody wants to do this, but how else do you get compliance with your codes?
Mr. Campo?
April, do we have any other public comment cards that have been called in?
No, sir.
Meanwhile, Commissioner Fender, you've been very quiet here.
We're all about the trees 5 minutes ago.
I've got nothing to say on this topic. I mean, yeah,
This is a tree ordinance that was to protect the trees. You
I
remember
agree,
that? And now all of a
100%,
sudden,
though,
you're the canary
are we
that,
gonna protect them or not?
the cat that ate the canary.
I'm completely baffled.
One thing I will say, Mr. Lagana did tell me that he was willing to put up a lot of trees on the property to make up for that. And we were in agreement that it'd be wonderful to go ahead and come in and bring a lot of trees on the property. So that he agreed on that. So I don't know where things got lost.
In all fairness, I think Glenn's correct. I mean, the first thing is you have to come into compliance. And number one, it shows good faith, and number two, it stops the violation from occurring. What the fines are or everything else, again, that's, there's processes that are involved with that. But I just think that's just really the key thing.
And if I
And
could,
and is there a reasonable expectation that we won't be talking about this in another year if we do nothing?
that olive branch was, set out months ago, maybe a year ago. And there's an opportunity to speak to now, and there's no comment card. So,
One was just turned in.
well,
Kathy, Ms. Kowski?
Good evening, Commission, and I had no intention of speaking. I don't take a side for or against. However, I will go back in history, and since I am on the CEB board, which is the Code Enforcement Board, at that time, we had a new manager, and our new manager was not using the Code Enforcement Board at all. I happened to come to what I saw on the website, that there was a magistrate hearing for code enforcement. I actually came to one of the first trials, I guess, with the magistrate hearing that Mr. Lagana had. And at that time, it was he said, she said, and I didn't have the paperwork in my hands because the Code Enforcement Board was kind of bypassed. And I remember sending out an email to the commissioners, and Mayor Tompeck, you actually responded, and that pursued, and eventually, months down the road, the code enforcement was finally used. But my point here is, the heart of the community is the Code Enforcement Board. We get the information, and we get it from Jack Reisinger, our building code inspector, and we look at all those things. And while this was a very big issue, I think it would have been a difficult one to do, but in saying that, I feel that the whole process from the very beginning was unfair. And when I see a community member immediately be fined $58,000, while maybe there were 2 other code enforcement issues with other properties, the one as you came over the bridge and everything was raised off the bottom of that property down at the river, you could see it from the bridge, and that person was given the option to replace trees, and I'm sure maybe Mr. Lagana was given options to replace trees, but the fines on that property were not anything near $58,000. So I'm just saying that, and I know you can't at this point go back and line by line check everything, but I just can't sit here as a community member. And I agree with some of you, it's a hard thing to take a property, and especially if I could say that the whole process was handled the way it had always been handled in town by a town manager, but it was not. So I'm making that very clear. That town manager did not handle things the way other town managers had, in my opinion, my experience, because I was on the board before she came. Okay? Anyway, thank you for listening to me.
So I just think I need to make it clear for the record, as Ms. McCaskey said, she was not involved in this, so she didn't hear the case, and she obviously couldn't hear the case in the future because she's expressed an opinion on it. So if the commission has any inclination to defer a little bit, one suggestion could be you authorize foreclosure, but hold off for 30 days before we start anything. Give Mr. Lagana a chance to bring the property into compliance within that 30 days and file an application with the special magistrate. And if he doesn't, because I know as Commissioner Campos said, the olive branch has been extended many times in the past by many different people, myself, Mr. Hudson, Mr. Daniels, and if he can't bring it into compliance in a certain number of days, whether it's 10, 20, 30 days, then I hate to say it, but shame on him, right? And then you go to a magistrate, and the magistrate could do things like reduce the fine or say plant trees. The magistrate has that authority. But the first step is Mr. Lagana has to bring the property into compliance. It's been 2 years.
Mr. Daniels.
Not to contradict what you're saying, but there is one little piece in the process, just so there's no misunderstanding with Mr. Lagana. Once the property comes into compliance, Jack has to go out and certify that it's in compliance, and he produces an order that goes to the special magistrate who wrote the original order.
Absolutely. Correct, yes.
Commissioner Campo.
I'd like to respectfully request that Mr. Lagana come into compliance by removing the fence and taking down the shed. Would you approach the dais and let us know if you would be able to do that? And let's try to settle this. We're all neighbors.
All I can say to the commissioners is, Mr. Daniels, Mr. Hudson, you're all trying to get me to bring it into compliance, assuming that it is not in compliance. A tree permit had been issued for the exact number of trees removed by the previous town manager. When Ms. Berger took over, she re-signed and reissued that permit. Now, I was charged with removing trees without a permit because Ms. Berger erroneously assumed that the permit had expired, and the permit had not expired. So I don't want to be against you. As you say, we're all neighbors. But in consulting with an attorney, we're going to open up the original contention. And then at that point, when a jury of my peers tells me I was wrong, because the minute I do anything that says we're coming into compliance, I'm admitting that Ms. Berger was correct and Mr. Torcivia was correct. And my feeling is I am not going to do something against my own interests. Thank you. You have to foreclose? Have at it.
Okay, so I assume the answer was no then, right?
I move we advise our legal counsel to give a 10-day notice to Mr. Lagana, and in an attempt that we remedy this situation, come into compliance, and if not, then to seek outside specialized foreclosure counsel to begin foreclosure procedures.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mayor Tom Peck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
No.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender,
No.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes.
Okay, let's see, that brings us down to, unless I'm missing something, staff and, commission and staff closing comments. Mr. Daniels?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I want to thank everyone for their participation and involvement with our strategic planning session that we had last Saturday. I think Dr. Delaney did an excellent job, and staff, and I was very pleased with our move forward. And I'm excited about seeing what Dr. Delaney comes back with us in March, so I appreciate that. I also just wanted to make an announcement. We were scheduled to have breakfast with Bob this Thursday, but there was a scheduling conflict, so we're going to do it the following Thursday. I think that's February 2nd. So I'll be sending out the notice tonight to everyone, but I wanted to let everybody know, be 9 o'clock the 2nd, right here in this room. And short of that, that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Campo?
I just want the commission to know that I followed up with the county engineer and have requested a site visit for India Lucy and that odd curbing.
Yay.
And hopefully we can get someone to come out, and who knows what happens from there, but I just wanted you to know that I followed up on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Mayfield?
I like that. I was just driving by, looking at it today, thinking about it. Back to the tree issue, I think that instances like this, which aren't necessarily, they can be brought to the commission, but it was just a staff thing. It makes me realize kind of what we talked about before during the planning or the other meeting we talked about it. We do maybe have a meeting where we review our ordinances so that we're familiar with it, because I believe we had, I don't know if that was Jackie Thurlow a while ago, had talked about how much time they spent on the tree ordinances. So I think they're pretty good, but maybe we're reviewing for our sake and to fill in some gaps where maybe even procedures could be improved, because I really like what you suggested, and I don't even know if that's written down anywhere or that's just something that would be in place while you're the town manager. But I think it's a good opportunity for us to do better and to improve for the future, because I agree that the flora and fauna of Sewalls Point are amazing, and that's what makes it so special, makes people want to move here. But it's hard when someone is following the ordinances. I don't want to use maybe some flubs here and there as the example of, what not to do. I'd rather do it at a separate time where we improve our game so that when it happens, we are doing a better job, so.
And if I may, just to the procedures, I have a procedures manual, so it will be in writing in the manual for our staff.
Good.
And obviously, whoever comes to replace me in 10 years, they can write whatever. Well, if I'm still around on the face of the earth, but
Yeah.
whoever does that, then they are free to set whatever policies and procedures that they feel are appropriate. But obviously, with your blessing,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have anything in there that would go against or contradict the direction that you all give me.
Yeah, and there are probably some other small little things like that to be proactive, not reactive.
Correct.
Because we tend to be reactive, whereas this is a little more proactive.
And Bob, if you want to last as long as you go to the spa once it opens.
Yeah, there you go. I could just do it on lunch, Or do I get the day off?
Any other commission comments? Yeah, I wanted to thank Kim Delaney, did a nice job on Saturday. One of the things, when you look at the list is, it's daunting, it's overwhelming, and we always have to remember that eat an elephant one bite at a time, and that some of these projects are going to be out in the future, but as long as they're on the table, we're going to continue to look at them and see how we can get them funded, and it's important that we do that kind of discussion every year, just so we can update it and see where we are and where we're going. So I appreciate it. It was a good planning session. Motion to adjourn? So moved.
All right. Thank you.